Hello and welcome to our video, Funkifying the Clave. We're going to attempt to give you a basic understanding of how to apply Afro-Cuban rhythms to jazz, funk, and rock, whatever, with the focus on the bass and drums, because the relationship between these two instruments creates the foundation of the groove. Also, the key to understanding and playing these types of grooves comes from each player knowing what the other is doing. So when you see how both parts work together, it's possible to develop a feel for the rhythmic relationship that occurs in this type of music, and hopefully this will inspire you to funkify your own grooves regardless of what instrument you play. Now, it's not our goal to provide you with a complete and definitive background in traditional Afro-Cuban music. We're using the music as a departure point without losing sight of the past. For a more in-depth analysis of Afro-Cuban music, we recommend Ignacio Borgero's video, Mastering the Art of Cuban Drumming, Giovanni Hidalgo's video, Congo Virtuoso, which he did with Changuito. These are both available from DCI Music Video. Also, Frank Malabé's book with Bob Weiner, Afro-Cuban Rhythms for Drum Set, available from Manhattan Music DCI. Most of the material we're going to cover can also be found in our book, Funkifying the Clave, published by Manhattan Music Warner Brothers. You've read the book, now see the movie.
Bienvenidos a todos a nuestro video Funkeando la Clave. Vamos a presentar varios ritmos afrocubanos y a mostrar cómo se puede aplicarlos a otras formas contemporáneas de música, la música sumamente el jazz, el funk y el rock. Hemos decidido, como en el caso del libro nosotros, para hacer el proyecto juntos, el bajo con la batería, por la relación muy particular que existe entre estos dos instrumentos en la música afrocubana. Sin embargo, la idea de ese proyecto no es para dar una explicación definitiva de la música, la historia de la música afrocubana. Estamos utilizando la música como un punto de salida para llegar a otras formas y otras mezclas de la música. Si se interesa estudiar más profundamente la música afrocubana, podemos recomendar el libro de Frankie Malabé y Bob Weiner, Afro-Cuban Grooves for the Drum Set, Afro-Cuban Rhythms for the Drum Set, y también los videos de Ignacio Berroa y de Giovanni Hidalgo y Giovanni con Changuito, que son todos excelentes. Bueno, vamos a gozar y esperamos que también ustedes van a llegar a desarrollar sus propios movimientos y maneras de mezclar la música afrocubana con otros estilos y que la música siempre sigue para adelante. We're assuming that most of you have at least heard of clave or are somewhat familiar with clave, but we're going to give a brief definition, explanation of clave. The heart of all of Afro-Cuban music is in the clave. It's the equivalent of a backbeat in funk or rock and roll, 2 and 4 in jazz. It's even deeper than that because basically all rhythm, harmony, melodies, everything is subject to the clave in Afro-Cuban music. There are basically two claves. There's the son clave and there's the rumba clave. It's a 2-measure, if you're thinking in cut time, it's a 2-measure pattern. It's interchangeable. By interchangeable, I mean that there's 2 hits in the first measure and 3 in the second, or there would be 3 in the first measure and 2 in the second. And that by that we mean we refer to 2-3 clave or 3-2 clave. So I'll show you now 3-2 son clave. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, 2-3 son clave would reverse the measures. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Okay, the rumba clave displaces the third hit in the 3 part of the bar. You'll hear it. It'll be clearer that way. I'll show you now 3-2 rumba clave. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, 2-3 rumba clave again would be the reverse of the measures. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Okay, crossing the clave means playing the clave in the wrong side. In other words, playing a 3-2 clave in a section that asks for 2-3 clave. To understand that, there's no substitute for listening to the music. It's the same thing as turning the beat around in jazz. It's something that you feel, and that it becomes intuitive what side of the clave a certain figure is played, a certain song is played, a certain part of a song is played. And as I say, really listening to the music is what will facilitate your understanding of the clave. Yo estaba dando una explicación rápido de la clave, que yo estaba explicando la diferencia entre la clave del son, la clave de la rumba, que no hay una sustitución por entender la clave, solo hay que escuchar música para conocerlo y para aprenderlo. ¿Y qué quiere decir tocando cruzado? Todo eso viene de escuchando la música, porque es la corazón de la música afrocubana.
Afro-Cuban music is a marriage of African drumming, dance, and songs with European harmony and instruments. It was an integration that was developed in the course of this century by the great band leaders of Cuba and Puerto Rico. And the result was a huge variety of grooves and dances, which are known in the U.S. as salsa. The typical salsa rhythm section consists of congas, timbales, bongo, bass, and piano. And the heart of the ensemble is the bass tumbao. It's a repeated figure that creates the groove. It could also be played on the conga, which is also known as a tumbadora.
Se puede decir que la música afrocubana es una matrimonio entre bailes, tambores, ritmos africanos con instrumentos, armonías europeos. Fue desarrollado principalmente en Cuba, y en Puerto Rico y Nueva York, que el resuelto fue una gran variedad de estilos y de bailes que en Estados Unidos se conoce como la música salsa. La sección rítmica de la música salsa normalmente tiene congas, timbales, bongo, bajo y el piano. Al centro, la corazón de este conjunto es el tumbao del bajo, que es una figura repetido donde se crea el groove, y se puede tocar en el bajo o en la conga, que se conoce también la conga como la tumbadora.
Now we're going to play for you some basic tumbaos of various styles and tempos. Robbie's going to accompany me on the congas, cascara, and bell rides. This first example is just a very basic traditional tumbao. Notice that I don't start on the downbeat. After a beat and a half, I start on the fifth of the chord, and walk up and walk down. And this is very typical of this type of tumbao.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3.
This next example is a mambo moving between two chords. Also a very typical sort of tumbao. I'm going to play in the key of C to B flat. And if you notice, I'm going to be playing on the upper part of the bass rather than the lower part of the bass, just to get the thicker sound of the thicker strings, you know, to get it more of like a typical woody tumbao sound. Here we go.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3.
Here's a 3-2 tumbao, just so you can hear how these go.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3.
This next one is a fast mambo. And if you notice, it's a little different pattern. It starts on the third beat of the bar. Here we go.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Here's another tumbao that vamps between two chords. This is a sol montuno, going from C to B flat.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Here's a son montuno from 1957, Tito Puente Orchestra. It was played by Evaristo Barro, also known as Guajarón. Here we go.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3.
This next tumbao is a Guajira in F minor, composed by the great New York bassist Bobby Rodriguez when he was playing with the Alegre All-Stars in the 70s. Here we go.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Because the essence of Afro-Cuban swing comes from the 4 being tied over to the next bar, chord changes can be anticipated on the 4th beat of the preceding bar. To demonstrate, I'm going to vamp between C and B flat, and I'm going to anticipate each chord as I go. Here we go.
1, 2,
Now if you notice, when I'm crossing over on the strings, instead of barring with one finger, I'll play each fret with one finger, like this. Instead of barring with that's just the way that I do it. It makes for a smoother transition between the notes. Usually in a lot of tumbaos, it's good to connect the notes together as much as you can, rather than play short staccato notes. And that's what I've been trying to do with these examples. Now we're going to do the same thing that we did in the previous example, only I'm going to be doing it with a typical jazz progression.
1, 2, 1.
One good way to get a feel for how the tumbao works with the clave is to tap it with your foot while you're playing a tumbao. I've seen this done by Bobby Rodriguez and a few other guys on stage. Sometimes they even do it with their mouths. For me, I just practice it at home. I don't think it's so important to learn how to do this in performance, but it's a good way to think about the clave and learn how to feel the clave instinctually and get away from the linear time, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, going from point A to point B, and hearing the relationships between the rhythms.
Ahora Lincoln quiere mostrar un ejercicio que él vio a Bobby Rodríguez haciendo, que es tocando la clave con la pie, al mismo tiempo tocando el tumbao. Es una cosa muy buena para practicar, por internalizar la clave, y también es bueno para nosotros los bateristas porque no hay que tocar porque él está tocando la clave y tocando al mismo tiempo.
Now the tricky part about this is getting the syncopation between the foot and the right hand on the two sides of the clave. It's foot, right hand, foot, right hand. I'll break it down for you. Right? And on the three side, it's a little bit more in sync with the clave. Right? So if I play them together, it would be. Now a little faster.
As we said earlier, a typical salsa rhythm section doesn't include drums. At least salsas we know in this country. When I first started playing with Ruben Blades, it was one of the first times drums were placed in a salsa type group, and also when Ignacio Berroa used to play with Batacumbele, we're talking about almost dance-oriented music using drums. In Cuba, that wasn't the case, isn't the case. Drums go back to even the 40s. There were drum set players used in the cabarets and in a lot of the larger orchestras. And certainly the newer bands in Cuba now use a sort of a drummer slash timbalero. The timbales are integrated into the kit, oftentimes over on the left side. And I'm talking about dance bands. Used drummers is very common to see, but whereas in this country it's not as common, at least in salsa. I'm not talking about Latin jazz. A lot of the rhythms that you've heard up until now on the drums are percussion type rhythms, basically timbale patterns applied to the drums. Again, in a Latin jazz context, and also these rhythms that you've heard, we can strongly recommend Ignacio's Berroa's video. He also goes into a much more detailed explanation of the clave, but he breaks down a lot of these rhythms you've been hearing, the bell rides, the paella, cascara, as well as a host of other things as well. But right now we'd like to walk you through a basic structure of a salsa tune, which the basic form of a salsa tune consists of the verse, the montuno section, which is where the chorus comes, and that's where the lead singer improvises in between the choruses, doing his inspirations, inspiraciones they're called, followed by a mambo section, not to be confused with mambo music, but the mambo section, the salsa tune, which is the instrumental section, the shout chorus, back to either the chorus or the verse again and out. We're now going to play this for you, a tune called Mambo for Tajreed. Yo estaba explicando que en la historia de la música salsa, a menos en Estados Unidos, la batería es una cosa nuevo, más o menos, no en Latin Jazz, pero en la salsa. Yo empezando con Rubén Blades fue una de las primeras veces, también Ignacio Berroa con Batacumbele, pero en Cuba han usado bateristas para mucho tiempo, desde las 40s, y sumamente ahora es muy común ver batería con timbales al mismo tiempo. Los bateristas están usando timbales en la batería, así que no existe timbalero así en los grupos, muchos de los grupos modernos cubanos, hay un baterista que está tocando las dos cosas al mismo tiempo. Bueno, por una discusión más profundo de lo que yo estaba tocando rítmicamente aquí, yo puedo recomendar de nuevo el video de Ignacio, donde él habla mucho de paila, de la clave, de varios patrones de la campana, también muchas otras cosas, pero para una discusión más profunda de eso se puede referir al video de él. Entonces, ahora vamos a tocar una canción en la estructura de la salsa, que el verso, el coro, donde hay las inspiraciones, soneos, después el mambo, no la música mambo, pero la sección mambo y el coro o el verso y ya, la canción se llama Mambo for Tajreed. The intangible element within this music really lies within its swing, the phrasing of the groove in between the triplets and eighth notes or triplets and 16th notes. It's the same type of tension that happens in the ride cymbal beat and straight ahead playing, or what part of the pulse a bass player walking bass sits on. Every music has its own swing. I mean, talk about Viennese waltzes, you can talk about really any kind of music, and this is again where we have to say that listening is no substitute. But there just as a drummer, Elvin Jones, Tony Williams, everybody has their own identifiable ride cymbal beat. With the cascara, there's a lot of ways of playing it, and with all these rhythms, depending on how you phrase it. Again, it's this tension of between the triplets and 16th notes, because If you think about it, really the triplets or 16th notes are a pretty arbitrary description of these rhythms, because most of these rhythms come from Africa, and there's really not a differentiation. You say, well, this is a 16th note, this is a triplet. And one example that I always like to give is a sort of Brazilian 16th notes. You're probably wondering what referring to Brazilian music in an Afro-Cuban video, but I think it's a good example. I think it's pretty clear that when you talk about the differences between the feel and the 16ths and the triplet. So if you were to play straight 16th notes, say accenting the last 16th note and all the and on the beats, in a very strict 16th note, it would sound like. Okay. Now, if we were to play those as triplets, this is right, left, hand to hand. If we're playing as triplets, sort of a flam triplet type thing, we would have. Okay. Well, Brazilian 16th notes in a samba sense are actually in between those two. So you get something like 1, 2, 3, 4. Yo estaba hablando de la importancia del swing de esta música, la timba, la facilidad de frasear entre las semicolcheas y tresillos, y es como la misma tensión que existe en la música de jazz, con el platillo donde se pone los golpes, que a veces no se puede escribir porque tiene que ver con swing. Y de nuevo, la manera de aprender eso es para escuchar, que cada música tiene su propio swing. Una vals de Viena tiene su propio swing. Y nada, también afecta mucho la relación entre el bajo y la batería, y en qué parte del tiempo uno está tocando, uno un poco más para adelante a veces, uno un poco más para atrás. Y un ejemplo que a mí me gusta siempre dar es de semicolcheas brasileros, si ustedes quieren. Una cosa de 4 semicolcheas por compás, pero que suena no como semicolcheas en el oeste, una cosa que son entre tresillos y semicolcheas. Entonces, ustedes van a ver.
Maybe we could demonstrate a little bit of the tension that occurs in this type of music between the bass and the drums. Like, for instance, sometimes I'll sit right in the middle, sometimes you'll push, sometimes it'll be the other way around.
Okay.
So maybe we could play a couple of different.
All right, so I'll do like a cascada pattern, really sitting back on it, and then you can maybe.
And I'll push it. I'll put a little edge on it.
1, 2. Okay, and now we could try the opposite thing.
Right.
I'll make it more tight and on top, and you can lay back
and I'll
on
sit in the middle and make the notes a little longer. And
Okay.
Okay.
1, 2. Songo represents a rhythm created in the late 60s, 70s that really with the drum set in mind. It was developed, elaborated considerably by Changuito, Jose Changuito Quintana, and also the leader of Los Van Van, Juan Formel. There's been a lot of discussion about the fact that it isn't just one rhythm. Changuito will be the first to say that, and Ignacio also, and a lot of people, that there is no, this is the songo rhythm, like you say, well, this is the funk rhythm. This is the samba rhythm. It's a style. It's a rhythmic style that and it changed up with the conguero was playing, and again had the drums in mind from the beginning. It also represented some of the U.S. influences in Cuban dance music, Motown, rock influences, and so forth. And it really was a movement. It had its own dance and everything. And it's been something that I think that drummers in all over the world have had a lot of fun with, especially when playing, Afro-Cuban music. Yo estaba diciendo, hablando del songo, que para mí el songo representa un estilo como desarrollado por Changuito, Juan Formel, y que es un ritmo que estaba pensando en la batería desde en primer lugar. También afectó las congas, el bajo, como vamos a ver con Lincoln, y yo creo que representó algunas influencias de Estados Unidos por la música bailable popular cubano, como influencias de funk, de Motown, de rock and roll, etcétera. Y la cosa importante para decir, como ha dicho Changuito muchas veces y Ignacio, que no es un solo ritmo, que hay una manera, eso es el ritmo songo, es más un estilo donde se puede hacer muchas diferentes cosas y se puede desarrollar a muchos diferentes movimientos y estilos. Lincoln ahora va a hablar de la función del bajo en el songo, que representa para él el songo.
Bearing in mind what Robbie said about the songo and outside influences coming in, for the bass, it just made it a much more free and open style, breaking out of the traditional 2-bar patterns into 4-bar, 8-bar patterns with a lot more filling, a lot more improvising and interplay between the instruments. So as Robbie's playing his songo examples, I'm also going to play like a regular dance tumbao and sort of stretch it into more songo-like lines. And it's really like, songo is like an attitude. It's like something that's sort of permeated into all modern salsa music, even the dance music.
So Lincoln and I are going to start just jam for a little while in a songo-type groove. I'm going to be orchestrating it around the kit, the tom-toms, cowbells, just using a lot of influences I've heard people playing songo. Obviously, Changuito, Ignacio Berroa, also the great Horacio El Negro Hernandez gave me lots of ideas also with the songo. Entonces vamos a tocar un poco varios movimientos del songo ahora, yo con Lincoln, y que representa varias influencias del songo que yo he escuchado, como de Changuito, de Ignacio Berroa, de Horacio El Negro Hernández. Y bueno, ahora vamos a ver. 1, 2, 3. Now we're going to break it down, play it a little slower. Ahora vamos a tocarlo un poco más despacito. 1, 2. one of the things that I enjoyed doing with the songo that I developed years ago, over the years also, with especially playing with my associate here, Mr. Goins, especially with Dave Valentine, was I sort of, when I was playing the songo and playing around the kit and everything, it's a lot of fun, and I like the way it sounds, but I also wanted to tighten it up a little bit and sort of play more of a funkified type thing, and still keep the bell in there, but sort of taking care of what, you know, the kick, snare, hi-hat in the same part of the groove. And so I just basically moved the left hand over to the hi-hat and found some shots on the snare drum, which almost they aren't backbeats, but it's like a sort of a songo type backbeat thing. And anyway, and then Lincoln went along and did his thing on the bass. Yo estaba diciendo que para mí para funkear el songo me gustó mucho tocando así como yo estaba tocando en toda la batería, pero también me gusta tocar un poco más funky, un poco más apretado. Y lo que yo hice es yo puse la mano izquierda ahí en el hi-hat, y es un estilo que bueno, hemos desarrollado por los años con Dave Valentine, con mi socio aquí, Lincoln Goins, que él va a hablar en lo que él hizo a funkear el songo también.
One of the things that Robbie and I did playing with Dave Valentine was, it was a lot of times we would go out on the road and it would be a quartet, and we would have a chance to, like, you know, sort of extrapolate and condense rhythms from other instruments and just play them on the two instruments, the bass and drums. And aside from Robbie doing that on the drums, I would also do that on the bass, and I would add things. You can do that by using the slap technique, and I'll show you how it can be used to embellish a tumbao, and, you know, to build intensity in the rhythm section. This is a style that I first heard used by Sal Cuevas in the 70s with a, you know, playing on the Latin recordings with the Fania All-Stars. And then later in the 80s, when I went to Cuba, I had a chance to hear some of the cats down there playing, and they showed me how they used it. When you do this kind of when you do these kind of grooves, you have to be careful not to use them too much, because they have a tendency to clutter up the groove and you know, make it sound a little thin on the bottom. I'll start off playing a regular tumbao with my thumb, and I'll embellish as we go along.
1, 2.
All the songo grooves we've done so far have been in 2/3. Here's one in 3/2. We're going to start off with the simple basic groove, and we're going to funkify it for you.
1, 2.
Now we're going to play a songo, which will demonstrate some of the grooves that we talked about. This is going to be a trio tune with our friend Bill O'Connell. It's basically some of the ideas that we've developed over the years as a rhythm section for Dave Valentine.
Now we're going to get into the guaguancó. The guaguancó is one of three forms of the rumba originating in Cuba. The three forms being the yambú, the guaguancó, and the columbia. We're going to be concerned with the guaguancó. Basically, the rumba form was developed in the last century in Cuba after the abolition of slavery. A lot of the slaves moved to the urban centers of Havana, Matanza, and began creating the rumba, which primarily was played on conga drums, voice, stick pattern, and of course the dancers, because this is all to accompany dancers. A lot of people think of the rumba as something folkloric. It's not really folkloric. In fact, it's popular. I think that in this country, when you talk about popular, you speak about something being commercial, and folkloric, something being sort of pure, historical. But in Cuba, that's not really true, I don't think, for the guaguancó, because when you say that, you're implying that it's something archaic, that for anthropologists to study, and it's not at all. The rumba is constantly developing, is changing. It's very much alive. It's a popular art form. Yo estaba hablando del guaguancó, de la rumba. El guaguancó viene hay tres formas de la rumba: el yambú, el guaguancó y la columbia. Pero nosotros vamos a mostrar el guaguancó, y que el guaguancó es una cosa, la rumba es una cosa desarrollada en Cuba, principalmente en La Habana, Matanzas, y que es una música que no es folclórico, es una música popular, que no es una cosa arcaico, no es una cosa que para los antropólogos es más una cosa que sigue viviendo, sigue desarrollando, y que la rumba es una forma así, que normalmente son tres tumbadoras, la guagua de palos, la voz, y siempre acompañando el baile de la rumba. So I'm now going to demonstrate a basic guaguancó on the congas. Again, there's a million variations of these parts. Obviously, you check out Giovanni's videos and just listen to the music if you want to get more into the variations. And Mr. Goen's going to help me out. He's going to play clave. This time he's going to play with a stick, not with his foot. So first, this will be the tumbadora part, the guaguancó. Okay, now I'll play the basic tres golpe pattern. Okay, you'll notice with the tres golpe that it's normally played contra clave, which means that the ging is not on the three side of the clave. It's not the ga. It answers the three side of the clave. And then of course the other drum involved in the rumba and the guaguancó is the quinto, and he solos over this rhythm, basically following the dancer. And so forth and so on. He's following the movements of the dancer. And again, these are very basic, the rhythm. I mean, the way a lot of people play now is they don't even play the whole tres golpe pattern. More than one guy actually solos, is replicando. Yo estaba explicando, esos fueron los dos partes más básicos del guaguancó. Claro que hay 20,000 variaciones, y que también parte del quinto. Y yo estaba diciendo que hay mucha manera de tocar la rumba, el guaguancó, que el quinto sigue las personas que están bailando, y que a veces se puede tocar el tres golpe diferente. Lo que está tocando el tres golpe se puede replicar también, pero eso es más o menos básicamente como suena, y ahora en los dos tambores. Now I'll play the guaguancó between the two drums, and then you'll see how it becomes applied to the drum kit. Okay, let's go. So that was an idea of one of the ways you could apply the Wawanko rhythms, the conga rhythms, to the drum kit. Basically, the bass drum was playing sort of the tumbadora part, and the toms were in the tres golpe and a little replicando with the snare drum. Eso fue una manera para aplicar los ritmos del Wawanko, de las congas, a la batería.
The role of the bass functioning as a drum part is real evident in the Wawanko. I'm going to play a couple of traditional lines and also one extra line that's a line of the great composer and band leader and bassist from Cuba, Israel Cachao Lopez.
1, 2, 1, 2. One of the things about the Wawanko, again, we're up to the part where we're funkifying it, is that you'll notice that that obviously the clave is being played, and that we found that you can apply this into a funk kind of a thing. And first of all, if you think about New Orleans second line music, you think about Bo Diddley grooves and so forth, where it's more sort of 3-2 clave or 3-3 clave sometimes than backbeat. You get this sort of a feel. Yo estaba explicando para hacer más funky el Wawanko. Hay la clave y hay la música de New Orleans, donde se toca más clave que clave 3-2 que backbeat. And I'm talking about sort of and so forth. So we're gonna play some sort of New Orleans type thing, and then we're gonna show how we move that with the Wawanko. Okay. 1, 2.
Now we're going to jam on some grooves, going back and forth from traditional Wawanko lines to lines that combine rumba, New Orleans, funk, and you know, some hybrid lines, some funkifying lines. Here we go.
We're going to bring out Wayne Krantz again to join us up here in the trio on a wawanko that Lincoln came up with, a fast wawanko. When it comes to Afro-Cuban 6/8, you're talking about a whole bunch of music. I mean, we haven't even really mentioned bata. A lot of the bata rhythms are in 6/8. There's also other styles, African styles in Cuba. There's the more Congo styles. There's abacua, ñáñigo, arara. We haven't really gotten into any of this, and we really aren't going to because it's a whole other series of videos. But in any case, the 6/8 rhythm, we're going to give you sort of a basic feel of the 6/8 and show the different possibilities how you can play it, especially with time feels. Cuando uno está hablando del 6x8 afrocubano, es una cosa que se puede hablar de muchas diferentes formas de la música, de la bata, que no hemos mencionado todavía, también de la música abacua, arará, etcétera, que son muchos en 6x8. Pero nosotros vamos a dedicarnos solamente a un porción de un ritmo básico 6x8 y para mostrar las posibilidades en lo que se puede hacer con el 6x8. Ahora Lincoln va a hablar de eso.
Robbie and I composed a little 6/8 jam that's going to show how you can subdivide the 6/8 and go between various time fields. The 6/8 is great for that. It really lends itself to that kind of a thing. This particular jam is going to start out in a 6/8. We're going to go to a half-time jazz, back to a 6/8, then to a double-time jazz, to a 6/8, and then we're going to play like a shuffle, like a blues shuffle, back to the 6/8 again, then to a waltz, and then take it out. So here we go. The cha-cha groove, actually the correct pronunciation is cha-cha-cha with 3.
That's right.
Is most easily recognized by tempo, which is generally medium, slow to medium. You can easily incorporate it into funk and rock because it's one of the basic Afro-Cuban rhythms that goes well with a backbeat on 2 and 4. And it has an emphasis more on the downbeat. Sort of like Santana's version of Oye Como Va, Louie Louie. A lot of pop music will use a cha-cha groove. A lot of the old Carol Kay stuff was cha-cha stuff.
Well, lo que está diciendo Lincoln es que con la cha-cha-cha, que sumamente es un baile, y la música siempre acompañando el baile de la cha-cha-cha, se puede utilizar en muchas formas también de pop americano, porque es una de las únicas formas que inmediatamente es muy fácil a tocar el 2 y 4, el backbeat. Claro que todo el mundo conoce Oye Cómo Va, y canciones como Louie Louie, y bueno, es una música que cuando lo toca, muchos artistas americanos de pop han utilizado esa música sumamente por el tiempo, porque el tiempo es más despacio. When it comes to what I play on the drums, a lot of it is just some of the same timbali type rhythms slowed down and just orchestrated slightly differently. Cuando tiene que ver con la batería, yo toco mucho de los ritmos del timbal, pero más un poco diferente como la manera de orquestarlo en la batería y más lento que los ritmos que ustedes han escuchado hasta ahora.
Here's a little line that I devised for the cha-cha-cha using the slap technique. It's basically the same thing that I explained in the songo section. You keep the tune bow on the bottom and you just do extrapolations on the top. So at a little slower tempo, it's a little easier to see what I'm doing. So here we go. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Here's a blues we're going to play that we're going to play as a quartet that sort of demonstrates some of the things that you can do with a cha-cha-cha.
The Mozambique is another rhythm that's often been used in a rock and a funk context. Steve Gadd, a lot of people know his grooves. A lot of them are sort of Mozambiques. Even Ray Charles has used Mozambique. Um, One of the things about it is that it was developed in the mid to late 60s by Peo el Afrocan in Cuba. It has a lot of similarities to the rhythms of the conga, the comparsa, which is the carnival in Cuba. And it's a sort of a hybrid of that with a lot of different things going on with the congas and so forth. But it's been used a lot in the States. In addition to Gad, Elvin, even a lot of his Latin sort of ride cymbal beats are sort of Mozambique type. With the bass, the lines usually start on the downbeat on the two side of the clave, and you also can note the rhythmic and harmonic patterns of the first bar, which are usually like a 2-chord vamp moving down a whole step.
Right.
Yo estaba explicando que la Mozambique, que fue desarrollado por Peo el Afrocan en Cuba en los 60s, también fue un ritmo que fue utilizado mucho en Estados Unidos, pero claro, no igualmente, no en el igual estilo, pero como un hybrid, por Steve Gadd, hasta Ray Charles, que todo el mundo conoce mucho los grooves de Steve Gadd, que él lo puso en una pila de canciones. Y por el bajo, empieza normalmente en el 1 del lado 2 de la clave, en el 2-3 clave. Y también la armonía en el primer compás normalmente son de 2 cuerdas que está bajando por un paso entero. So we can just play a basic Mozambique beat, and you'll see how it goes with the bass. 1, 2. Well, as we were talking about, the Mozambique can really be applied into a funk rock kind of a context. We're going to have Wayne Krantz come up here, do this as a power trio, guitar, bass, drums, a tune that we like to call Metal Mozambique. one of the things we'd like to talk about is that, as we've been alluding to this I think in the course of the day, that we really want you to think openly about the rhythms, about the music, even about the clave. We've demonstrated different rhythms from the cha-cha, the Mozambique, songo, guaguancó, but you really don't have to think rigidly that this tune is going to be a mambo, this tune is going to be a guaguancó. As we've said, all of these rhythms are basically they're dance forms. They have a dance accompanying them. And a lot of the most popular dance bands, especially more contemporary bands, really take a lot of liberties with the music. I'm speaking about a lot of the newer bands in Cuba, NG La Banda, Paulito y su Élite. In Venezuela, it's a wonderful band, Guaco. All of these bands use drums, they use funk influence, they have a lot of funk influences. Then in the course of one tune, you'll have maybe songo, you might have a guaguancó section, you might have a Mozambique, and that this is dance music. This is actually pop, what would be commercial music in these countries. They're the most popular bands in these countries. These are the bands that everybody dances to, and they're wide open in terms of what they're playing. It's really incredibly wide open. The NG La Banda in the middle of a tune might go into oleo. They'll start going into a bebop tune, turn that into a mambo.
Also Brazilian and calypso and stuff
all
like that too.
All those
Caribbean
influences.
Yeah.
Yo estaba diciendo que uno tiene que estar muy abierto con la música, que hemos mostrado varios ritmos, pero que eso no quiere decir que una canción es en este ritmo. Estamos tocando una canción que es guaguancó solo, que muchos grupos en Cuba ahora, en Venezuela, están tocando muy libre, con muchas influencias del funk, de música brasilero. Yo estoy hablando en particular del grupo NG La Banda de Cuba, Guaco de Venezuela, Paulito y su Élite. Todos esos grupos tienen batería, tiene bajo que está haciendo el slap, todo eso, y que uno tiene que pensar muy abierto. Uno tiene que estar muy abierto con la música y no piensa que muy rígido, que eso es la otra cosa es otra cosa. Se puede cambiar y mezclar hasta en una sola canción, porque esos grupos que yo estoy mencionando son grupos bailables, popular, comercial, y ellos están poniendo un poco de todo el tiempo. A good example of what we've been talking about now is a tune that Lincoln wrote that we're going to play, which incorporates a lot of different styles. It's sort of a guaguancó-ish funk type thing. It's got songo, it's got like a mambo section. Also the clave changes back and forth, and this is also a really common device in all this music we're talking about, that clave can go from 2-3 to 3-2, 3-2 to 2-3.
Right, but the clave doesn't really change itself, right? I mean,
the clave itself never changes. It's just the way to change the clave in the course of a tune is you add a bar or you take out a bar within the course of a percussion break or something like that.
That's what you usually do. Even like the stuff that you hear on the radio, the pop salsa stuff, like it'll start out in a 3-2 and then it'll go to a 2-3 for the instrumental part and then go back, and they'll do that by what you were saying.
Definitely, because that's even like, again, with Ruben Blades. I mean, he might have a song where he heard the verse 3-2 and the chorus that he came up with was 2-3. That's no problem to have that in the same tune, and I think that another thing. I mean, we're basically talking about how being open and not thinking very rigidly about all of this. That another thing that the bass drum doesn't necessarily have to double the bass tumbao. I think you probably have noticed that a lot by now. Just like in funk, you don't always have to.
Yeah, especially when there's just when you're just working with the bass and the drums, and there's no other percussion instruments involved. Like, well, I'll play some parts. I'll take some of the percussion parts and I'll play it. You can really spread the groove out and make it like a puzzle, and that's what Robbie and I have tried to do on a lot of the things that we're showing you.
Definitely, and that a lot of that has to do with also playing when you play drums along with percussion. Drums in a percussion section. One of the things about Afro-Cuban music is you don't want to be doubling what somebody else is doing. If you have a timbale player playing cáscara, I'm not going to play cáscara if I'm playing along with a timbali player. Or if you have a conguero, I'm probably not going to do on the cross stick and tom-toms. It creates more dimension to the groove that way.
Absolutely, yeah. There's a lot of different things you can do, you know, and what we've done is just some ideas for you, you know.
Estamos hablando que también que una canción que escribió Lincoln, ahora que vamos a tocar, que también se muestra cómo se puede cambiar la clave, que la clave no tiene que estar siempre 2, 3, 3, puede estar 2, 3, 3, 2 en la misma canción. Es muy fácil cambiar la clave, solo tú tienes que añadir una compás o sacar una compás y ya tú puedes ustedes pueden cambiar la clave también. Y es una canción también que tiene varias secciones, un poco de guaguancó funk, de songo, de mambo, y bueno, so we're going to play this tune by Lincoln. Let's go.
Thanks for watching. We want you to realize that there's many other Latin rhythms in the Afro-Cuban tradition. Not to mention those of Brazil, Haiti, Dominican Republic, other Caribbean countries. You know, we hope we've shown you a means of capturing the attitude of some of these basic grooves and helped you hear, you know, where these rhythms can go. And ultimately, you should feel free to take these grooves and create things that work for you, you know. We feel that this is the best way to keep the music growing, you know, to understand the integrity of its roots, you know, doing away with any preconceptions, and that allows the music to reach more people. Thanks a lot.
Bueno, esperamos que ustedes todos divirtieron con el video nosotros, y que también hay que mencionar que no hemos discutido nada de muchos ritmos afrocubanos, pero también de otros países latinos, claro, que de Brasil, Haití, República Dominicana, pero esperamos que por menos hemos mostrado un poco de la actitud de estos grooves, movimientos, y que lo que nosotros queremos es que todos ustedes se puede crear nuevos grooves que trabaja para ustedes, así que la música siempre está creciendo. Para nosotros es muy importante a respetar la integridad de toda la tradición, de los raíces y todo eso, pero al mismo tiempo para no tener tantas preconcepciones, porque así la música va a llegar a más y más y más gente, y que sigue siendo desarrollando y para adelante. Bueno, gracias.